All right, peeps. Today we're talking about classifying numbers. So, in sixth grade, we only have three different type of classifications that we need to talk about. They're actually written on my board here already. Whole numbers, you guys probably heard about it in fourth or fifth grade before. Integers, we actually just learned about this week. Integers, we talked about those positive and negative numbers. We're going to give you a couple more rules that go with that today. And then rational numbers. We haven't talked about rational numbers yet, but rational numbers are actually super easy, but we'll talk about those last. First off, whole numbers are your regular counting numbers. Your whole numbers are numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Whole numbers, a rule that goes with those, they are always positive. So we talked about the mirror image, the negative numbers are mirror image of positive numbers. You watched that video. Negative numbers, even if it's -3, negative numbers cannot be a whole number. +3 would be a whole number, but -7, -8, -9, none of those are actually whole numbers because they are negative, and whole numbers are always positive. Hopefully you can see that. Whole numbers are always positive. The second rule for whole numbers. Whole numbers do not, I capitalize not, that's important, do not have a fraction or a decimal, except if the decimal is 0. So some examples of some whole numbers. I know I gave you a few a second ago, but some examples of some whole numbers. 5, 3, 10. A couple trickier examples. 7.0. So y'all, even though that has a decimal, the decimal part doesn't have any value. So 7.0 is just like having 7. So 7.0, yes, is a whole number. 8.0 would be a whole number. Here's a kind of tricky one. 4/4. 4/4 is 4 divided by 4, which we know equals 1. So 4/4 actually is a whole number. That's kind of tricky, I know, because it's not technically a fraction, or it's technically a fraction, but 4/4 is one whole. One last example, another kind of tricky one would be 4/2. 4/2 is 4 divided by 2, and 4 divided by 2 equals 2, which is also a whole number. The next thing we want to talk about are integers. We have two rules for integers as well. Integers can be positive, but they can also be negative. So I say for integers, they can be positive or negative. They can't be both, but if it's positive or negative, which all numbers are positive or negative, it can be an integer. So the main rule you need to worry about is rule number 2. Similar to whole numbers, integers do not have a fraction or decimal besides 0. Some examples of some integers. Just like 5. 5 is still an integer, but since we can include negative numbers, -5 is also an integer. -7, or even -7.0 is an integer because the decimal does not have any value. We could also say negative 4 over 4. Since that equals negative 1, negative 1 is an integer, we can use this whole fraction. The last thing we're going to talk about here are obviously probably one of the easiest ones, rational numbers. So y'all, rational numbers also have two rules. Rule 1, they can be positive or negative. So kind of like integers, rational numbers can be positive or negative. I'm going to put the plus for positive, or I'm going to put the minus for negative. Can be positive or negative. And their second rule, just in case, positive or negative. And the second rule is they can have a fraction or decimal piece. So rational numbers can be positive or negative, and they can have a fraction or decimal piece. So some examples of rational numbers, honestly, almost any number that you can think of at this point is probably a rational number. You can see that. 2.1 is a rational number. Negative 7.5 is a rational number. 5 is a rational number. Negative 30 is a rational number. 1/3 will give you a decimal, but it is still a rational number. 1/5 is a rational number. Y'all, rational numbers are the easiest ones. Honestly, almost every single number we talk about in 6th grade falls into this rational number category. So remember, this is classifying numbers. I will show all these notes to you kind of slowly in case anybody needs to see these a little bit closer to copy them down. Just pause the video if you're good, if it's going too quickly for you, and copy those notes if you need to see them. These are the same notes we will be doing in class. Oops, sorry, rational numbers. These are the same notes we will be doing in class, and then we're going to be working on the Google Forms that goes with it afterwards.